Hey, welcome to Tabletop Skirmish Games. I'm Lee, and in this video, I'll show you how I painted the Gnawbone Stray from Cursed City, or as I like to call it, the Zombie Cat. And here's our model that we're going to be painting today, and this is a great miniature, one of my favourites from the Cursed City set, and I'll certainly be using it in other games too. It's going to be perfect as a zombie cat in some zombie games, and I undercoated this with the Citadel colour Wraithbone undercoat, and we'll be using pretty much contrast paints in this video. And the brush that I can recommend is the Army Painter Wargamer character brush, but I've also been using the Kalinsky number 2, which I'm starting to favour a lot more now, and so I can recommend that too. Okay, let's get started with a contrast black Templar, and this is going to go on all the areas of fur and the areas that aren't like damaged skin. And so I'm putting this on quite generously, giving it one nice coat, and that's all we're going to do with this, one nice coat of the black Templar. And I'm just going over all this area now, and I'm trying to start and end my brush strokes where I want most of this contrast paint to build up, and that's going to give us the kind of darker recesses and the little shadows. And on the flatter areas, we don't want so much paint there, so I'll just use the brush to push and pull the paint around and make sure it finishes exactly where I want it to go. And the contrast paint's great. It really does like to run into those cracks and crevices, and so you don't have to do an awful lot of work, but it's just getting that amount of paint right on your brush, and that's just going to come with like practice and trial and error, and just getting used to how much you can put on and how much it's going to run and flow. And so I go back and forth to the pot quite often, just to put a little bit more on there until I get the balance right. Now when I get to the more detailed areas, like we've got a little bit of a kind of shoulder blade sticking out here, a little bit of bone, we don't want to paint that black. So I make sure I've got less paint on my brush, and then when I get to the really fine details, I'm almost using it like a felt tip pen, so there's not much coming off at all. But you can see the difference there. Some of that paint's pooled already by the leg. Great, now we're going to go to a brilliant colour, the Vollupus pink, and this is going to be going over all the areas where the kind of flesh is torn back and you can see the bones. And just like before, I'm putting more paint on my brush where I want it to run in between the ribs, and then less as I go on to the different sections like the tail, the little bit of the front leg that we can see exposed, in areas of the face too. So just getting that amount of paint right is the key here, but I'm covering it all, so I'm not trying to go in between the gaps. I'm literally going to put this Vollupus pink over every single area of bone, but then when we get to this bit at the back, a lot more paint going in because that's where the crevices are. But then when I get to the face, I'm not going to completely cover it, so I've got much less paint on now, and you can see I'm being quite like rough and ready with it, quite free with my brush strokes, and almost using it again like a felt tip pen, so not as much paint's coming off here. And then I'm just a little bit on the tail as well. And then once that's completely dried, I took some base Wraithbone paint, and then using that number 2 Kalinsky, because you can get a lot more detail, I'm just going to pick out each of the ribs now. And so that's going to leave the Vollupus pink underneath. It's going to leave a nice rim around where the kind of fur and flesh has been pulled back. And so we're really going to see that bright, vibrant pink coming through. But the bones are going to be nice and exposed too. And I imagine these have been pecked clean by some crows or something gross. And so we really want to see some of that bone coming through. So again, picking out the tail, but just the little, almost like little bits of bone, so we can still see that pink. And then on the face, I'm just picking out the raised areas. I imagine this has got a bit more flesh on it as it's been kind of scalped back, which all sounds pretty gross, which is awesome. But yeah, just picking that out, really letting that pink come through. And then one of the eyes is missing, so we're going to leave that with the black in there. So that's got a nice dark recess. And then on the teeth underneath, I'm going quite more generous with this Wraithbone. And there we go. So just taking my time, picking it out, making sure I keep moving the model so I'm nice and steady. I've got my arms braced on the table and I can get those nice detailed strokes in. And yeah, I'm making the model work for me. So I'm moving the model rather than moving myself. And then just turning it here just to pick out the little ribs on the other side. And then once we get to the top, I'm just going to use the side of the brush and run along like the spine, and that's just going to allow me to hit the most raised areas, and that's where we're going to get the most bone exposed. And then not forgetting, we've got a little bit of shin popping through, and we've also got a little bit of this shoulder blade as well. So just picking out those most raised areas, let that pink come through, because that pink and black's a great combination. And then once that's dried, we're going to take some Skeleton Horde contrast paint, and now I'm going to go over all the ribs here. And this I was trying to be quite gentle with the amount I was putting on, so I'm not going to flood it, because I don't want it to go over the pink too much. But you are going to get a little bit of this Skeleton Horde over that Vollupus pink. But don't worry, the pink's really strong and vibrant compared to the Skeleton Horde, so it's still going to come through. And then I took some Waystone green. This is a technical paint, and very fine. I took a smaller brush now, and I just took a little dot of this paint. It's almost like a glossy paint, so it's going to dry really shiny. And I put a nice, generous dot of that on the eye, and that's going to give us a real zombie-looking green cat eye. And that's pretty much all there is to it. That's the cat complete. And I thought in this video, because it's quite short, I'll include how to do the base as well for this cat. And I've done a separate video on the base, but I've included it here so you can have a go. And so here we've got the cat separated from the base now. And I'm just going to get my snippers and clip away this little bit of the base, because I want to cover it all in some texture and then glue the cat back on at the end. It might have been better to cut this off first, but I think it worked just fine doing it like this. So I was very careful, and I've left all the elements that I've painted whole. And so make sure this is all nice and trimmed. And then we can start the base. So I've got some Gorilla Super Glue. I've got the base and a little bit of plastic I cut off the cat. Got two little stones, some really fine budgie sand, and some coarse flocking. And I'm just going to run my Gorilla Glue all over the base. And being not overly generous, it's quite thick this, so it's not going to run everywhere, but give it a nice coat. And I'm going to pop that bit of plastic from the cat back in the slot, and that super glue is going to hold it in just a few seconds. It's going to get it nice and set. A little bit more glue over the top of that, and then I'm going to stick on these two little bits of gravel, and these are really flat, so these are going to resemble the cobblestones and tie in with the theme. And then once they're on, I'm going to sprinkle on some of the coarse flocking, and this is all different bits of wood chips really, and then cover the rest in budgie sand. And this is so fine, this sand, so it's perfect for these small miniatures. And then I'm going to tap that off back into the tub and use my finger to wipe around the rim there, get it all nice and clean. And then once we've done that and it's dried completely, we're going to take the Abaddon Black with a little bit of water wet down so it flows nice and easily, and we're going to give one thick coat over the entire base, and then that's going to get it all nice and ready and primed, ready for painting. Once that's dried, I took some Sky Grey, which is a 0.989 from Vallejo, added a little bit to a kitchen towel, got my very vegan makeup brush, which is super soft bristles, loaded them up, and then tried to wipe off as much paint as I could on the paper towel, just to get that brush nice and dry. And then very gently, I go over the whole area of the base, really gently and soft, and that's why this makeup brush just works perfect. You can pick these up for like £2 for £4, I think, and it works great. So I'm just taking my time, doing it layers and building up slowly until I'm happy with the colour. And this really brings out all the different textures from the sand, the flocking, and those bits of gravel we've used. And this is really going to brighten this up. We're going to cover it with contrast paints, so this is almost like a zenith or prime, I guess, underneath. But once that grey's gone on, it's going to pretty much dry immediately. And so I'm going to take some 0.951 white from Vallejo, add it to the kitchen towel again. Make sure you shake these bottles, really give them a good shake. And then I haven't cleaned the brush because most of that paint's going to come off now. And then I go in, load it up with the white, same thing, wipe that paint off. And then I go really gently now, and I only want to pick out the very most raised areas. So I'm picking out these two bits of like cobblestone or gravel that we put on, and the bits of coarse flocking that are really standing out. So I'm just catching the edge there. So I'm being really careful now. I don't want to go all over with this, just the very most raised edges. And then keep going until you're happy. And then you can see here that this is the one I made on the left for Curse City, where I used some milliput to make some cobblestone. So I want to use the same colours from that. You could also make another cobblestone base for the cat, but I wanted to go for something a bit different. So I've gone for the Gryph Charger Grey, and here I'm just going to put this over the kind of big raised bits, and just catch those bits of flocking that stick out as well. So these gravel bits are almost going to act like old cobblestones that have sunken in to this slimy, grimy earth. And so it's all going to tie in, but we could also use this in other games too. And then I'm going to take the contrast snakebite leather, and this is the main colour for this kind of slimy earth, and so I'm giving this nice coat all over, trying to avoid the areas I just put that Gryph Charger grey on, and I'm going to coat that all over, running in the cracks. I'm not giving it a complete coat, so there's bits I'm going to miss out, and that's all going to add to the effect. And so keep going until you're happy with the amount that's on there. And I'm not flooding it. I haven't got too much on the brush. Not quite as little as like a felt tip pen, a little bit more, but just getting that balance right again. And then while that's still wet, I take some BASILICANUM grey, and I'm just going to dot that around and just break up that kind of solid snakebite leather, muddy colour. And this is going to just give us a little bit of grey in there, give us a little bit more darker shadows in amongst it, and just mix it up and make it kind of pleasing to the eye too. Then it's time for some Plague Bearer flesh, and this is going to go just around mostly these big rocks. I might put a little bit on top of the rocks too, just a touch, and then just dot it around randomly where you think it's going to look good. If there's any areas with dimples, I make sure it pools in those. Then I'll take some blue tack, stick it on the end of my brush, pop the base onto that blue tack, and that's going to hold it like a nice little turntable. Then I get that Abaddon black again, that base paint, and with one nice thick coat we're going to kind of paint the rim, and I'm going to do it black this time and give it a nice coat all the way around. And I can use this then for any game. I don't want it to like just be tied into Curse City. I want to use this in some zombie games in the future as well, so I think that'd be quite fun. So I've just gone with the black this time. And there we go, there's our Zombie Cat Gnawbone Stray from Curse City, all painted to a tabletop ready standard with mostly contrast paints. I'm really happy with how this gross little creature turned out. I love it, it's a great miniature and it's going to be so fun to play. You could do a little bit more work if you wanted to. Certainly you could dry brush those raised areas of fur a little bit. But for me, I just want to get it tabletop ready. I was really happy with that. And I love that Vollupus pink, how that mixes with the bone skeleton horde colour. I think that looks great. You might prefer it on the cobblestone base, and I've done a separate video on that if you want to see how I made that with the milliput. And I like it on the cobblestone, I think it looks quite cool. But I'm going to be using it in other games, so I wanted to keep it kind of universal. I'll put some links in the description to all the paints and products I use in this video, so if you want to try out these methods, then you can find them for yourself, and there'll be affiliate links to Element Games, but it won't cost you anything extra. In fact, with those links you can save up to 20% on all your gaming products and games and miniatures, and for every sale made through those links, I get a small commission, and that's going to help me do loads more videos like this. So thanks so much for that support, it's brilliant and I really appreciate it. If you like this kind of content and would like to support the channel, then please check out my Patreon page, and thanks to everyone who's joined so far. It's really awesome. We hang out on Discord, talk about the hobby, share ideas and help each other out, and you'll get some perks there that you're not going to find anywhere else. So I'll put a link in the description and it'll be great to see you there. I hope you enjoyed the video. I'd love to hear your thoughts about this tabletop method using the contrast paints, and also what's your favourite character from Curse City that you've painted so far. But thanks so much for watching. Please like if you like it, subscribe for more videos like this, and don't forget to hit the notification bell to join me next time on Tabletop Skirmish Games.